So we will go ahead then and welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Berkley Planning Commission. Today is Tuesday, October 27th. And in accordance with recently adopted legislation, this meeting is being conducted virtually via the Zoom platform. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next up on the agenda, we have roll call. Erin, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Bartis?
Present.
Commissioner Campbell?
Here.
Commissioner Kempner?
Here.
Commissioner Patterson?
Here.
Commissioner Richardson?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Stern?
Here.
Commissioner Trotto?
Here.
Chair Kapelansky?
Here. Okay, moving on, next up is approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda? Or motions to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a support. Any other comments or changes to the agenda? No? Erin, could you call the roll, please?
Campbell?
Yes.
Kempner?
Yes.
Patterson?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Stern?
Yes.
Trotto?
Yes.
Bartis?
Yes.
Kapelansky?
Yes. Okay, moving on to the minutes from the September 22nd meeting. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes? Or motions to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second. Okay, motion and second. Anything else on the minutes, anyone? Erin, could you call the roll?
Kempner?
Yes.
Patterson?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Stern?
Yes.
Trotto?
Yes.
Bartis?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Kapelansky?
Yes. That brings us to communications. I didn't see anything. Is that correct, Erin? Nothing? Okay. So now we move on to citizen comment. If any members of the public wish to speak during the appropriate agenda item, we ask you to please use the raise your hand feature or dial *9 if you've called in. Comments can also be submitted to planning@berkleymich.net. As a reminder, the Planning Commission will not engage you in any discussion, and we ask you to please state your name and address and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Do we have any members of the public that wish to comment on an item that is not on the agenda this evening? I don't see anyone. Is that correct, Tori and Erin?
Correct. Okay. Correct.
So close citizen comment and move on to our first agenda item, which is a facade change for 3180 Coolidge. Erin, did you have the staff report on this?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to reference my review letter that was included in your packet. The applicant at 3180 Coolidge Highway is proposing a height addition and a facade change. The existing height is 14 feet and 8 inches, and the owner is proposing to increase it to 21 feet. The maximum height in the Coolidge district is 40 feet, so the applicant is well below that maximum. The applicant is also proposing a facade change on the west facade facing Coolidge and painting on the north, east, and south facades to match the color and design of the west facade. The proposed facade change will include cultured stone, horizontal metal siding, metal canopies, and an increase in windows. No other site improvements are proposed with this project. Per my review letter, section 138-679, there are 6 standards of review. Just go through a couple of the items that I think the Planning Commission should discuss and review this evening. As noted on page 2, in section 138-447A, requires that a building that fronts a major street shall be composed of minimum 40%, maximum 80% window coverage. The existing building as it stands right now has 143 square foot of windows facing Coolidge, which is 26.7% of that facade. The proposed facade change increases the existing window coverage to 255 square feet, which is 32.8% of the Coolidge facade. This is below the 40% maximum, but minimum, as I mentioned in my memo, the PC may modify the design requirements if all of their standards have been met. We request that the Planning Commission discuss and determine if the proposed square footage and percentage meet the intent of the ordinance. It is important to note that the north and south facades of the existing building will have an increase of window coverage. There'll be 8 additional square feet on the north side and 96 square feet on the south side, where there currently are no windows whatsoever. So there will be an increase along the sides that the Planning Commission may determine makes up for the lack on the Coolidge facade. As I mentioned earlier, the height, the applicant is proposing to increase the height of the building. They are proposing to increase it to 21 feet. This increase is taller than some of the neighboring buildings along Coolidge, but it would not be out of character for the neighborhood. The proposed addition and facade does not create any adverse effects on public utilities, roads, or sidewalks. It does not change any pedestrian or vehicular traffic, as the building occupies the entirety of the parcel itself. There are a couple of other things that need to be addressed by the applicant this evening. Specific in my review letter, the chimney. There's a question about the existing chimney that's located near the rear of the building. It is shown on the aerial and when you drive by the site, but it is not included on the plans. So we request that the applicant address that if that's going to be removed or if that was just omitted from the plans in error. We've also asked the applicant to provide materials of color and of the proposed materials for the Planning Commission to review. The plans do not include any changes in landscaping or site design, but before any future tenant takes occupancy of the building, we require that the building, a business license be submitted to the building department to ensure that any future use conforms with the zoning ordinance, as well as any other reviews for signage, lighting, parking modifications, etc. The parcel is located in the DDA, and the design committee did review these plans. They have a review letter that's provided under separate cover. The applicant is not seeking any DDA funds as part of this project, but we did ask the DDA and the design review committee to look at this project to make sure that it does fit with the design guidelines and the overall aesthetic that we are trying to portray in the DDA. The DPW has also reviewed the project and has provided their comments under separate cover. There isn't anything outstanding that can't be addressed administratively. The fire marshal reviewed the plans and found no issue from a public safety perspective. Again, they're not changing anything from public egress in order for a public safety perspective, but we want them to look at it just to make sure that they're on the same page. So just to summarize, we're excited for this project. We think that this is an exciting facelift for this building that has sat vacant for quite some time. And we recommend approval of the project with the following conditions as noted in my review letter. Number 1, for the PC to determine if the reduced window coverage of Coolidge Highway meets the intent of the ordinance. Number 2, we request clarification from the applicant about the existing chimney and its future use. Number 3, for the Planning Commission to determine if the proposed materials, specifically the horizontal siding that are going to be incorporated, is appropriate at that site. Number 4, the canopies that are proposed on the site will need to be reviewed during the construction plans to make sure that they comply with the ordinances related to canopies and awnings. And number 5, that final site plan approval from DPW, the fire marshal, and community development prior to any building permits being issued. With that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks. I see that we have the applicants with us tonight. Did you want to introduce yourselves? Is it Stan?
Mr. Kaleff, are you there?
You're gonna have to unmute yourself. I'm asking you to unmute. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Ghassan. Hi. My name is Ghassan Khalaf. I'm the design engineer for this project, and we are very excited to have this building renovated the same way as the city are excited. We trying to beautify that building to make it ready for any tenants to come and rent it. So the work that we're trying to do is just exterior facade work, nothing internal. In regard to the chimney was omitted. We are aware of the chimney, but it was omitted because we were thinking like if there is any tenants that will come, they will put rooftop units, so they don't need that chimney anymore. This chimney is working for the furnaces inside the building. So this chimney, we think it's not needed. We can add it to the plans for time being, and then it could be removed later when the new tenant, when they come and they decide to remove it, they can remove it. So that's not an issue. In regard to the windows, I will leave this up to you, but I believe that the amount of the windows that we're providing right now, it's decent enough, especially as Aaron said, like we have already like on the sides, on the two sides, on the north and the south, we have extra windows too. So, and that's it. I will let you guys discuss it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone from the public who wants to comment on this one? I don't see anyone. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and we haven't received any emails either, correct?
Correct.
So then I will go ahead and turn this over to the Planning Commission. Who would like to jump in on this one? Anyone? No one?
Okay, Kristen.
Thanks, Marty.
I waited. Regarding the windows, as you look at the front of the building, the west end, and it's on a corner site, as everybody knows. They are increasing the sizes of the windows on the front facade. They're lowering it. It's up there at, I don't remember, was it 3 or 3.4, 3.6 before the height of the existing windows? I don't remember what the sill height is, but what is the proposed sill height?
Why is you mean the proposed one? Why it's high?
No. How high? You're lowering the sill height for the glass.
Oh, it's a 24 inch.
Pardon me?
It's a 24 inch. You're talking about the bottom, right?
Oh, okay, is that right? Okay, I'm asking.
Yeah, 24 inch.
And it looks like you're raising the head height of the window, the glass also, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. But it looks like regarding, we're on a corner, you got a lot of glass on the two sides towards the front where the redevelopment is happening. And I calculated about between the glass, about almost 400 and, if I did this right up, almost 450 square feet of glass total, give or take. I could be off 10 or 15 feet. So I think it all being in the front of the building, being a corner site. I don't know if there's an issue on the south side. Are you right on the property line?
On the south side. Here's the thing. I was just talking with the owner about this because we were not informed about this. But he owns the parking lot. The parking lot which is to the south, he owns it.
So is it part of the same site?
Yes.
Or is it a different?
Exactly. No, it's going to be part of the same site. We did not have that information before. We knew that he owned some property, but we did not have it. Now he's telling me that his property go all the way to the next door building, which the address, if I'm not mistaken, is a 3170 Coolidge. So the address of the building is a 3180, and the address of that vacant lot is 3170.
Okay, so he owns all that.
He
So
owns
that's
both
not-
of them, exactly.
So the south side of the building is not a property line.
No, it's not.
Okay, because otherwise you, as you probably know, you couldn't put glass on a property line like that. So, okay.
Correct.
Well, that goes
Correct.
away. So as I was getting at, there's a plenty of glass on the front of this building. On the, obviously the front west side, and then added on the north, increased on the north and added on the south. So I think, I don't know how the other commissioners feel, but I think he complies with the glass because it's out there. There's plenty of glass on the three sides of the front, so I don't think that's an issue. So he's making it significant. Now, we don't have anything, and that's one of the problems with our Zoom meetings. Unless Aaron, he submitted some sample materials or colors.
No, he did not.
Because when he speaks, I get a blank screen, so I don't, wouldn't help much to show him up, hold him up to the screen either. What is the color palette you're using for this?
For the siding itself, it's going to be kind of a dark color, black or bronze color. I don't know if you've seen the new Wendy's restaurants, the color that they have. And then for the stone, it's going to be just the earth tone, kind of beigeish color for the stone.
What about the metal trim on the canopies?
It's going to be dark color too.
Also dark. What is that?
Mm-hmm.
What is that metal siding? What is the metal siding?
It's the metal. Have you seen Wendy's restaurants?
Well, I see them. I don't know if I know what the new format or the new prototype is.
If you see the one that in Ferndale, the one on Woodward, just north of 8 Mile, they have similar material.
Okay, so it is a commercial. It's not. It is a commercial siding, not a residential type siding.
No, it's not residential. It's commercial.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm making notes here. How high are the canopies off the grade? About 10 feet?
The canopy, yeah, it is 10 feet.
Okay. Did I read, Aaron, did I read in our new ordinance that we're talking about projections that it must be, does our ordinance say 11 feet? It's not our new ordinance, it's a discussion item, but does our current ordinance say 11 feet off the grade or the sidewalk for projections?
I thought it was 10 feet.
Okay, if it's 10 feet, we're fine. If it's 11 feet, he's got to pop them up, I guess, unless, it looks fine. I mean, aesthetically, it's fine. And those are open. Those are open. They're not solid canopies, right?
Yeah, just functional, not functional, just decorative.
Okay. What is what's the color of the crown stucco?
As I said, it is going to be dark too.
Okay. When we make a motion, I think we'd appreciate that you send a selection of the samples to Erin Schluto, so we know what we're getting, and she can look at it and make a decision. Because I understand where you're going with this, but I'd like to see the colors, or at least have Ms. Schluto see the colors. What is the material on the back of the new parapet on the facade? Because that's going to be fairly prominent. You're raising it up a good 7.5 feet. What's the material on the back?
On the material on the back, you mean
coming from the east?
Oh, it's going to be roofing material.
What kind of roofing material? EPDM or?
Yes.
Okay.
But we'll try to wrap it around, not to be exposed. I understand your concern.
I'd kind of like to see something a little nicer above the existing parapet. You have a dotted line on the east elevation. Above that, if you have a EIFS, is that, I suppose the stucco means EIFS, correct?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And this is just me, I'm one of 9. I'd like to see the EIFS continue down to that dotted line. That's my opinion, because that will be very prominent from Beverly, people driving. And if it's EPDM or whatever your roof material is, I don't know what it is on this building, it's not necessarily a good look. So if that's something.
Oh yeah, well, the pillar, the stone pillar will wrap around. Yeah, you're right. It will look nicer.
Okay, but between the stone, okay, yeah, I don't see the stone pillars wrapping around either. But I suppose you'll wrap those around the width of the parapet, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now, but in between there, you've got 30-something feet of material that's that right now you're saying is going to be the roofing. I'd like to see, and again, I'm one of 9. I'd like to see the EIFS, the stucco, continue down to that dotted line of the lower parapet. So people driving out, we're not looking at a ugly piece of roof. Because I'd rather see something a little more finished. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, if that's something that that's a suggestion I have. I don't know how everybody else feels, but that's a suggestion I have. Otherwise, I think there's a significant improvement. I think you have everything covered here. I would just like to see that the back of the parapet, the new parapet, in a little bit nicer of a material. So I had a question. There was a question here regarding the site plan, that the existing site plan isn't exactly the east end, the rear of the building is the rear of the site is really at the rear of the building, correct? Doesn't extend out 20-something feet.
Exactly. The building goes on the property line.
Okay, so, but now you're telling us, and that's fine, that the property line extends south considerably.
Correct.
Can you submit a new site plan with all that?
Sure, that will be done.
Plan? That's not my dog.
It's mine, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. No, I'm just asking if you can revise, since this owner owns the parking lot, we'd like to see what the site plan really looks like, and the building department certainly would. So, yeah. So, okay.
Let's go back if we can, like to the building from the back. If you are driving east, I'm sorry, if you're driving westbound.
West.
Is it okay if we wrap it like let's say 4 feet going inside, not for the entire building? The entire building width is 37 feet.
Yes, 37 feet. Like, yeah, you're gonna have 35 feet of some. I don't know what everybody else thinks. I personally think it's a billboard. I mean, you're raising the building considerably, and is it going to be EPDM roof, or do you have something else, modified something? Do you know what the roofing material is?
For sure, it's going to be like the white stuff.
Okay, that's pretty ugly too. The silver stuff, or are you talking about white? The term's escaping me. PVC.
The white one layer.
The white PVC. Is it plastic or is it built up?
It's not the built up. It's the one layer. It's not the 3 layers. Yeah. Okay.
Because I've seen a lot of that, and obviously, and it does look wavy. It doesn't look real nice on a parapet. And again, I'm one of 9, and we'll see what everybody else says. But I'd really like to see that back wall finished. Okay, that's my opinion.
Okay.
And the DPW had some comments that need to be addressed. They may have, I don't know. But other than that, I think this is great. I didn't know there was a company named Leased Unit, but you don't have a tenant yet, right?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Oh, it's not leased yet. Yeah, you're right.
That was a bad joke. Sorry. Let's see. Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Sorry I rambled on, but that's all I have.
Thanks, Marty. I think you went over a lot of the things that we had to cover, so. Anyone else who wants to comment on this one? Matt? And then I'll go to you next, Greg. Oh, you're muted. Matt, you're muted.
Sorry, I was cutting out the dog. No, I was saying, looking at the lighting on the building right now, it's lit up with old barn lights. I don't see them on there, so I'm assuming he's going to be changing the lighting on the building. I'm assuming that they'll have to submit photometrics to you, to the city for the approval. And
Yes.
I don't know, I'm looking at the drawing of it, and like Marty's saying, it doesn't really clean up the back, but I think if you were to just wrap the pillars and the edges of the building, it might hide a lot of it. Instead of just making like a Western storefront, actually just bring it around the side, it might clean that up a little bit, Marty. Maybe he can save some money on that aspect.
Well,
too.
he did say he's going to wrap the stone around, a foot or so.
Okay.
But you still have 35 feet of ugly roofing material on that wall, and it's pretty tall.
That is true. Yep. So, I mean, I wouldn't say it's to make it look exactly at the front, but maybe we can do something to clean it up, that's all. That's all I have.
Oh, sorry, Greg, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Marty. I would rather see that back of the building wrapped as well. When people come up to that corner, I wouldn't want to see a big white sheet of nothing next to a nice new redone building. So that was my only thing. I'm good with the windows being changed. I know it doesn't really meet exactly, but I think it's close enough, and I think there's enough of them that it'll help to bring that area where we're thinking of, at least with the windows. I'm good with that. That's all.
Okay, other comments, Lisa?
I'm also good with the window. I think at the street level where you're walking, it seems to be open. You can see what's going on inside. I think that's kind of the spirit of it. The windows went higher and filled up that space. I don't know that adds anything to it. So I'm good with the windows. I would also like to see it wrapped around the back so it looks nice coming from the other side. And I really do wish we had something that showed us what the colors were and what the materials were, because that is a little frustrating from this side. That's it.
Okay. I'll chime in just on the material that Marty brought up around on the back elevation. I would agree. I would like to see something a little bit nicer back there as well. So I definitely agree with that. And then I would also agree with the need to at least show some sort of colored rendering or material samples to the city staff before this is finally approved. That was one of my questions I had written down as well. Any other comments or questions from any of the other commissioners? I don't see anyone waving or with their hands raised. Marty?
Well, lighting was brought up. I don't see any lighting on here, and I'd like the applicant to maybe explain what they're going to do for facade lighting. And I don't know if we need photometrics. Of course, it depends on the types of lights, but what are their plans for lighting? If he's still there.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm writing the notes. Definitely, we're not going to use the same lighting. We're going to continue with using the same electrical outlets over there. So we're going to have lighting, but it's going to be horizontal. So it's going to be perfectly shielded from the neighbors.
Well, what is it though?
What's the material of the light?
No, what is the light? You say horizontal. Where? How many? Where is it? How high is it? What is it?
Oh, it's exactly the same way that they are right now. Like as an example, if you go to the north elevations, you will see 3 lights. So it's going to be exactly in the same location, but they're going to be different. They're going to be the LED lights, the one that shine. I'm sorry, I'm looking at you don't see them on the plans. They are on the, yeah, they are not on the plans. but they are like I'm talking. If you look at Google Street.
Okay. Well, let's put it this way. Pardon me?
They're just barn lights. You have exposed conduit and barn lights.
Okay. Let's see something a little more decorative. And when you send in your sample materials to staff, why don't you send in a cut of the proposed lighting fixtures?
Okay.
Locations.
No problem.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to overlight the thing and look like a billboard, but we'd still like to know what. We asked this of all applicants. We'd like to know what the lighting is going to be.
Agree.
And one other thing that I just thought of as I was looking at this, and this building is, the front facade is currently brick, correct?
Yeah.
Is that a full depth brick? Or is it thin brick?
No, I think it's the whole, the 4 inches.
Okay.
4 inches of brick.
Okay. And then so what am I looking at in the west elevation? Is that the existing brick that is going to be painted?
West elevation.
Under the windows, the 24-inch high bulkhead there. Is that going to be painted? Are you going to paint the existing brick?
No, this will be replaced.
New brick?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it will match the color theme.
Okay. Want a sample of that too?
Mm-hmm.
And then the cultured stone, it's called smooth surface cultured stone. And again, this is more the building department than us. That stuff, almost all the manufacturers, you can't carry that material down to grade. It wicks up moisture and it'll spall off and break. So that's be carefully detailed. But that's more of a building department item. So at the base, at the grade, at the sidewalk. Okay?
Okay.
So there may be another material down there, or you paint the brick underneath it, or the block, whatever you want to do. I'm not going to tell you how to build it, but that has to be carefully detailed at the base, or we're going to lose it after a couple of winters. So, okay, I'm sorry. That's all I have.
Julie?
Okay, I'm new, so forgive me if this isn't allowed, but looking at this plan and based on what was said, it looks like they're planning on putting a Wendy's drive-thru in. If you look at the north elevation, there's 2 windows. That would be the pay and the pickup window. I don't know if that's the intent. I have no idea how this actually works. I was all for this, looking at it earlier today, because I literally see this building from my front porch. But I think that we do need more information on the lighting and the material, like the lighting for sure. I think we need to know what the lighting is going to look like on the building, if that's the intent of the building. That's all.
Okay, so there's been no specific use identified for this, right, Erin?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to confirm that.
I'm just going with what it looks like.
Yep. Okay, anyone else? Or does anyone want to make a motion? I personally am okay sending this forward, or approving this subject to the conditions that we've kind of discussed, and subject to staff confirming all of those conditions and seeing the lighting and seeing the material samples, or at least renderings. But if the planning commission, wants to see this back in front of them, that's fine too. Does anyone want to make a motion in either direction?
Ms. Chairman?
Mark, I have a question.
Oh, yep, go ahead, Mark.
The number of the amount of usable square feet in the interior going to change from what it has been?
No, it's the same thing.
Okay, so there's no parking implication
No.
from this work. Okay, well, I guess I'm really on the fence about whether to send it on or to bring it back. As Marty went on, it seemed like there was more and more gaps in the information. None of them a critical gap, but like cumulatively kind of leaving us in the dark. So well, that's kind of unfair, but I mean, just cutting this loose without complete information. So I guess I'd be more inclined to want him to come back with some answers. And in the interim, he can show his samples to staff, and we can get the materials and the colors cleared up before the next meeting. I'd be more comfortable going that way.
May I ask a question? Aaron?
Yes.
Ms. Schluto, are you comfortable? Obviously, he's got to bring back a modified site plan showing the property lines, because this doesn't reflect what's really going on. If he sends you material samples, lighting fixtures and locations, a new drawing, and indicates what's on the back of the front facade, the east side of the main facade, are you comfortable reviewing those? I don't want to bring them back unless you're uncomfortable. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I'm comfortable reviewing them based on your comments this evening. My sole reservation on that is the fact that when I had spoken to the owner, and I asked him about the parking lot, he said he didn't own it. So that change in discussion has me a little has me paused.
Well, I hate asking people to come back, but that is a pretty big deal. Maybe we should bring it back because of that site plan. And again, it is me. Bring it back because of that site plan, and then he can the engineer here can pick up the items that we've discussed and have some samples. Maybe we can just wrap it all up, as Mr. Richardson was saying.
Yeah, I agree with Marty.
I agree with that too. And it's not that I don't trust that staff can do a good job reviewing it, but I also think that's kind of bordering on passing on our job, right? Our job is to look at it and be able to see the materials and see the lighting and see a proper site plan. And if we don't have all of those things, then I don't think we should move it forward.
I agree with Lisa. That is our job. So
yeah. And the site plan, not knowing what the real property lines are, that's a pretty big deal in itself. So I think that right there is enough to ask them to come back. And none of these are huge, but we do have to sort out what the site is.
So did you want to make a motion then, Marty?
I can. I've done it before. So are we denying this or asking them to come back? What's the exact motion?
No, I think we're just postponing it. We're not denying anything.
Okay, thank you. I guess I make a motion to postpone site plan SP 0420 to a date to be determined. There's some things we want to see on the drawings. I don't care too much about the chimney, but enough people talked about it. If they have a clarification, or let's see the intent of a written intent of what they want to do with the chimney. I agree, it may be removed if they put a rooftop unit on it. So the intent of the existing chimney, a revised site plan, submit samples to staff of all the materials, including the material that's going to be on the rear of the west raised facade along the 35 feet along the back between the thin cultured stone. And we'd like to see the light fixtures and their locations on the drawings. And if they're all purely decorative, I don't care about photometrics. And there is the DPW and all those, their comments that have to be determined.
Question, Madam Chairperson, I have
Yes.
if this were to be a drive-in restaurant. Would that be a special land use within this zoning district?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
That's a whole nother animal.
Yes,
Yes,
the
Ms.
site plan that you would be looking at has nothing to do with use. So if in the future that use were to be something for special land use or otherwise, it would come back to the planning commission.
Understood. Thank you.
Commissioner Campbell.
Just looking at ogov.com property gateway, there are two separate sites. They're both owned by the same entity. So it seems that they do own both sites. They're not combined. So it's two different sites. It's the parking lot building.
Right. And the property transfer documents I have only pertain to the building itself. So it didn't pertain to the parking lot.
Both the properties owned by the entity 3180 Coolidge LLC.
Right. That's what it looks like.
Okay.
But this is really just a facade change, so that identifying the other property, if there's some repairs required in the parking lot, that's not going to.
No, I just wanted to clarify that they own both of them.
Yeah. Okay.
What's on the record?
I just don't want to open a can of worms, or maybe they don't want to have a can of worms open. But this is really a facade change. Well, that's what our agenda says, so that wouldn't affect all that.
Okay.
Did I leave anything out? Did I leave anything out of the motion?
No, I think that was fine. I mean, we'll have the meeting minutes as well. And Aaron, I'm sure you can work with the applicant to make sure that they've addressed all of the items that we've discussed.
I ask a quick question too?
Sure.
Regarding the site plan. On the north side, it looks like there's a paved strip between the sidewalk and the back of curb. Could there be any consideration for making that grass, or does that have to remain asphalt if it's part of their property? I'm looking at Google Earth.
That's not part of their property line.
That's our right of way?
Yes.
Okay.
So that'd be something we would have to work with the DPW on.
Okay. Could they institute those improvements?
It's possible.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a
Do
motion.
we have a second?
No, we do
Marty,
not.
Marty make a motion. All right, I'll second
did.
it.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. So if everyone remembers with the virtual meetings, I do have to go and ask every single person if they have any changes to the motion. So, Matt, any changes?
No, I agree with what Marty said.
Lisa?
No changes.
Mark?
No changes.
Jeff?
No changes.
Julie?
No changes.
Marty, I assume you're good with your own motion?
Unless I left something out, so.
Nope, I think you were good. Greg?
Okay. I'm good.
No changes.
Joe?
No changes.
And I think that's everyone. I'm good as well. So Aaron, could you call the roll, please?
Patterson?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Stern?
Yes.
Trotto?
Yes.
Artis?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Kempner?
Yes.
Kapelanski?
Yes. Okay, so we will see you hopefully back at our next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, bye.
Okay, moving on, we have a public hearing. This is on a text amendment to allow permeable pavement. Aaron, anything to add to this one?
Just want to reference my October 21st review letter. This is the item that I brought to the Planning Commission's attention last month for discussion. Public hearing was set for this month. The proposed ordinance would allow for future development, the opportunity to explore using alternative paving materials if they so choose. Given the soil makeup in Berkley and change from impervious to pervious, anything that would change or incorporate these alternative paving materials would require review by the city engineers to make sure that they're installed correctly. And then it would be up to the Planning Commission to grant approval of that alternative paving material.
Okay, did we receive any, emails or comments on this?
No.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so I will go ahead and open the public hearing. I don't see anyone from the public that wishes to comment. Is there anyone that I'm missing, Tori or Aaron?
No, not at this time.
Okay, then I will close the public hearing and turn it over to the Planning Commission. This is a pretty straightforward amendment. Does anyone have any comments on this or motions? We all seemed pretty well in agreement about this at the last meeting, but does anyone have any changes? Marty?
No change, but the key phrase here: rely on the engineering department. We're going to heavily rely on the engineering department for one of these. You know, many of you remember what happened at the 12-mile Coolidge intersection, but not that that's going to be a problem with this, but this is material, especially in commercial areas. We got to be real careful allowing it, and because it does require quite a bit of maintenance. It can require quite a bit of maintenance, so we will rely heavily on the engineering department for the recommendation. I think everybody understands that.
Okay, do I have any motions to recommend approval and send this forward to City Council?
I can make a recommendation or a motion.
Yeah, might as well.
Well, this is just a public hearing. Okay, yeah, I guess we're recommending, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Doesn't have a number or anything on it, does it? Recommend that City Council recommend that approval of amending section 138-222, section. I closed it already. Pardon me. I guess that's it. Section 138-222 at the very end, adding D, construction, adding permeable pavement. Recommend approval.
Support.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Matt, any comments or changes?
I'm good.
Lisa?
No changes.
Mark?
No, no changes.
Jeff?
Oh, good.
Julie?
Nope, I'm good.
Marty?
Nope.
Greg?
No.
Joe?
No.
Okay, and I'm good as well. So Aaron, could you call the roll on this one, please?
Richardson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Stern,
Yes.
Trotto,
Yes.
Bardis,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Kempner,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Kapelanski.
Yes. All right, moving on to a discussion of exterior appliances. We got into this a little bit, I think, at the last meeting. And I think you're looking for some more final answers on this one this evening. Is that right, Aaron?
Yes, yes.
So, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'd like to reference the October 19th letter that's included in your packet. This is coming back for a continued discussion. So just to summarize a couple of things that we talked about last month, it was determined that the generators and air conditioning units should not be regulated the same as accessory structures, but should be treated separately and labeled as exterior appliances. This approach does make sense in how we want to regulate them, especially considering these have implications for side yard setback, rear yard setbacks, and such. So since last meeting, I was able to locate a draft ordinance language that had been written by my predecessor. It wasn't language that you had seen based on the date of the meeting and based on the date of the draft. So I wanted to provide it to you this evening so that way we had a starting point. But it's not something that I think is ready to move forward in any shape or form. It needs a lot of tweaking and some things need to be addressed. But it is a good place to start. The interest in allowing AC units in the side yard has changed a little bit since the last discussions that we've had. So it's worthwhile to continue looking at that as a possibility. As I noted last month, the current policy allows AC units to be located in the side yard. This has been a long-standing practice. Changing course on that now, as I mentioned, would increase the number of nonconformities and certainly would increase variance requests before the Zoning Board of Appeals. And as I noted last month, if there are repeated variance requests before the ZBA, I make it a practice to discuss those requests, especially those that have been there before, with the Planning Commission to determine if there is a change or an amendment that should be explored. So just want that to be clear in how we move forward, that if it does change the policy to regulate them differently, this may be something that comes back before you in the future. And Commissioner Trotto provided some information on the decibel levels. That was something that we had discussed at length. Specifically for generators, those were included in your packet for reference. And based on other research that I did, generators can be louder than AC units, but they are usually only used during power outages and then the routine testing. Such testing can be scheduled during certain times or certain days of the week so as to limit the amount of noise that your neighbors would hear. And I believe Commissioner Stern brought that up as well. So another item to discuss this evening would be the possibility of screening. Commissioner Stern brought that up again. So if AC units or generators were to be located in the side yard or even the rear yard, a method of screening on at least 3 sides is typical, and I've seen that in a number of other ordinances. This can be done through fencing or some sort of dense landscaping material that can be required prior to installation. The type of fencing can be regulated, so we would specifically limit those types of fencing materials that are that would completely screen the exterior appliance. So chain link fencing, for example, would not be considered an appropriate fencing material. Dense landscaping could also be regulated in a way that they must reach a certain height, so 48 inches, 56 inches, whatever. And this would remove the possibility of someone adding some decorative flowers or something and thinking that constitutes a method of screening when it only goes up a couple of inches from grade. One item that we didn't discuss last month and wasn't mentioned in any previous minutes or the ordinance that was drafted by Tim McLean was commercial properties. So we focus very heavily on residential properties, but we haven't discussed how we would like to regulate these types of exterior appliances for commercial property. Specifically rooftop mechanical equipment. The last applicant had noted that there was a possibility that a tenant might determine to put rooftop mechanical equipment, and there is no method of screening or anything else for those types of appliances. So this would be something that we would want to look at, especially setbacks and then any other screening, especially given that the noise level for a commercial exterior appliance may be larger and louder than a standard residential unit. So to facilitate this discussion, there are a couple of questions that need to be addressed. If we're looking to move forward with AC units in the side yard, would fencing and landscaping requirements, would that be appropriate to allow them into the side yard? Number 2, if generators are screened with routine tests regulated to the specific dates and times, would they be appropriate in the side yard? And do we want to lump them into one category together or allow AC units in the side yard but not generators or vice versa? Number 3, what standards would you be comfortable for commercial properties, or would you want to regulate them as the same as residential properties? Specific, we would want to get into rooftop mechanical equipment and screening them from the street view. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, and just to confirm, we have no one that wants to speak on this item from the public, is that right?
I haven't received any email or any communications, no.
Okay, so similar to the way that we kind of approach these larger discussions at the last meeting, I think it makes sense to take these questions kind of one by one. So I think the big question here and the main question would be, would we want to allow air conditioners in the side yard? And if so, would we require fencing and landscaping? And I think I want to talk just about the air conditioners first, and then next we can kind of get into whether or not we want to lump generators in with whatever we decide or treat those differently, and then get into the commercial after that. So as far as air conditioning units in the side yard, I think everyone's kind of laid out their views on a lot of this. So who wants to start? Or Aaron, would you just prefer that we kind of take a straw poll on just that question at this point?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay, is everyone comfortable with just taking a straw poll on whether or not they want to consider AC units at all in the side yard? Everyone's good with that to kind of start off a discussion?
Need a blanket statement that they're acceptable?
No, I guess what I would put the statement is, I would consider air conditioning units to be allowed in the side yard, either subject to no additional regulations, or it could be subject to screening and setbacks and a whole list of things. But is there anyone who does not want to consider under any circumstances air conditioning units in the side yard? No. Okay, so we're all on the same page where we would consider them. Now the question is, what are the regulations that we're going to put in place to mitigate some of the concerns that everyone has? So I think the first question would be setbacks from both the house itself, if we're going to look into that, and secondly, from an adjacent property line. So who wants to start off the idea of whether or not we're going to require any additional setbacks?
Well, I if I may start, I think the
Sure, go ahead, Marty.
I think the adjacent property line is the big question. You know, we talked about this in the past. I do want to back up a little more. We've been talking about this on and off for 5 years, and we finally agreed to call them exterior appliances. That's progress. So we're moving along. I think the issue is the narrow sites that we have. Anytime there's new construction, whether it's a addition on a house or a new home next to an existing, residence, or projections that are being added, we'll talk about those later, or we're talking about exterior appliances. Anytime there's something going on, it directly affects and impacts the immediate neighbors who were there first. Their house was there. This other house, whether it's added on to, is new. It's a new additions, a new construction, whatever. So especially on narrow lots, it directly affects the immediate neighbors. And I think with all these things, we have to consider them kind of under an umbrella. They're all different. So I have a problem. I don't want to say no way, no how, no where, but I do have a problem in a 5 foot. If you're 5 feet from your property line, plopping down an air conditioner, it's basically on the property line, your neighbor's property line, because you need to keep it a foot or two away from your wall, and that doesn't leave a whole lot of space for screening and things. So that's a difficult thing to get around, and I don't know how everybody else feels, but that's my biggest bugaboo. I know they're done, and we've had this policy in the past, which may or may not work. But that is a problem. Do we want to have a minimum, say it has to be a minimum 8 foot setback or 10 foot, pick a number. I don't know what the number is. But when we're looking at 5 foot or even 6 foot, it just doesn't fit with screening and, the required air around it, clearances and all that. So I'd like to hear what other people think about that.
Okay, Julie.
Okay, so I live in one of the narrow lots in Berkley. I'm on a 40-foot wide lot, and my air conditioner is on the side of my house. It's also behind a privacy fence. I honestly have no idea how this ever went through and was approved, because my air conditioner is on my neighbor's property line, on her driveway. But so for me, it would be an issue if this going forward. But there is proper screening. So on the side of my air conditioner, it's on my fence line, but I also have plantings along there that allow that it's screened. So I feel like there's a way to do it if you do it the right way. And we're in a position right now to set those standards, to make sure that it can be done the right way, because it's possible.
So the right way in your situation is putting screening on your neighbor's property.
No, the screening's on my property.
Right.
Screening, everything's on my property. It's just very close. And my air conditioner, maybe it's the way my house juts out, but the air conditioner is definitely on the side of my house. With a privacy fence and screening. So
it all fits in that whatever feet you have on the side of your house.
right, but there's no setback at that point. Like my air conditioner is probably, and unfortunately, I don't know what the setback's supposed to be for an air conditioner on your neighbor's property line.
Mr. Trotto can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you need about 12 to 18 inches of clearance around a compressor unit.
No, yeah.
A condenser.
Around the area with the coil. Behind the air conditioner, you can actually have it within 6 inches of your house.
But
within 6 inches?
Within 6 inches.
No. But what I'm saying is that I'm like the setback to my neighbor's property line. Like
So right now, there's no regulation for that. Right now, it's just, at some point, your neighbor gave a letter to the building department that said, I don't mind if my neighbor puts their air conditioner next to my property line.
That's the current policy if you're not aware of that.
Right. And I thought that's what it was.
Mhm.
But I think there's a way to do it properly with proper setbacks. And the people who live on narrower lot lines maybe can't abide by that. But I think there's a way to make it work for everyone. I just don't want to take away the side yard ability.
Lisa.
So I think one of my pet peeves is all the stuff we try and cram in the side yard setbacks, right? Between projections and egress windows and air conditioning units and now fencing or landscaping to go around that. It feels like, well, why bother even having one, because we're just jamming a bunch of stuff in it. That being said, I don't want to create something that takes half the city and makes them out of compliance. So if they have to upgrade their air conditioning, they now have to like redo everything to get it to go back to the back. That doesn't seem awesome either. So I'm not sure what the right answer is there, but it does feel, I mean, they are narrow lots and most people only have 5 feet. And if you're lucky, you have a driveway. So it's actually like almost 15 feet between your house and the next one. But otherwise, you might only have 10 feet, right? Or 5 feet from where your air conditioning ends to where that next house is. So I don't know what the right answer is, but it feels like we're just jamming a lot of stuff in the side yard setbacks.
And that's why we're still talking about this after 5 years.
Yeah. So as a follow-up to that comment, Lisa, you kind of like reminded me of something that maybe I don't know that we've approached yet, not that I want to add something else to this discussion. But if we do put a setback requirement on it, let's just say we throw out and say it has to be 8 feet from the adjacent property line. Are we still creating a whole bunch of nonconformities? What happens to those people who come in and want to replace their unit, just like you had referenced in your memo, Aaron? Will they then have to move it to the rear because they're only 5 feet from the adjacent property line? I don't want to throw out an arbitrary number. 5 feet to me seems reasonable, and everyone knows I'm okay with them in the side yard. And the reason I say 5 feet is because that's the regulation we have with garages now, I believe. Is that right, Aaron? 5 feet?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it seems like a number that we already have in the ordinance that I think we could use as a reference. But if it is 5 feet, are we still creating a whole list of nonconformities?
A big list.
And what happens to those people then?
Well, this is my opinion. If it's existing, it's existing. And, we use the word grandfathered in. I mean, that's really not the right phrase. But if somebody agreed at some point, at some time, to allow this air conditioner to happen in this, so be it. If they have to replace a unit, they replace a unit. We're not going to I don't think we should make them drag it around the back.
So I think then we kind of all agree that if there's an existing unit and that somebody wants to come in and put that new air conditioning unit in the former unit spot,
replacing it.
yes, that should
I'm
be
more
permitted.
concerned about adding more equipment.
Yeah, that should be permitted. So I think with whatever ordinance that we end up drafting, Aaron, I think that should be in there. Something that Marty's term grandfathers things in, even if they're starting over, they're taking the old unit out and putting a brand new unit in, it can go in the same spot.
The only complexity of that is it's 2 or 3 times as big as the old one, which is most likely not going to happen.
Right,
with
that seems pretty
technology.
rare. Yeah.
Right.
And
But
then
if it
maybe
fits-
that's when the ZBA can weigh in.
If it sits within the footprint of the old one, God bless them.
Okay, so there's one thing done.
Well, if everybody agrees, I mean, or at least that's what
I think based on everyone's past comments, I think people would agree. Is that right, guys? Is everyone on board with the replacing?
Yeah,
unit?
I agree. I think maybe just fitting in a footprint though. So I just had my air conditioner. I'm a side yard air conditioner guy, I guess. I have an extremely large lot though for most people. Like I have a shared street that used to be there, but the my unit was quite a bit larger. So if we're telling people they have to remain within the same footprint, but I will say it was quieter than my old one that was on the fritz. So I don't know how we want to word that, or Aaron, I'm sure will be creative, but I agree. If it's there, it can stay there. I don't think we should, it would have cost
Let's
thousands.
not create a lot of issues. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have cost thousands of dollars to move it. My HVAC unit's in the middle of my basement, so under a crawl space. So crawl space was in the back. So, but I mean, just to make sure that we're not then saying it has to be the exact same size. Same location maybe is better than even limiting it down to a footprint. If that makes sense of what I'm trying to say.
That may be fair.
That makes sense. Okay, go ahead, Mark.
So I have 2 questions. I think the first question is maybe a question I asked 3 or 4 years ago when we were talking about this. But in terms of screening material, are there any engineering or manufacturer's requirements that would require the screening material to be a minimum distance from the unit itself, or not?
So I think that's what Matt was commenting on, right? Didn't you say 12 to 18 inches?
Usually about 12 inches. As long as there's some airflow around it. The more airflow you have around it, the more efficient it is.
And it'll last longer.
Yes.
Okay, and then I don't recall this coming up before. We were always discussing this in terms of setback from lot line. Would it be possible to write an ordinance which differentiate between neighboring lots where the residences abut and they're just separated by side yards, and lots where there's a driveway that also separates them? Would that make any sense in terms of facilitating the authorization of these?
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. I don't think we'd really thought of that before. I don't see why we couldn't write an ordinance that references adjacent to the driveway lot line or something like that.
Yeah, like pick a number, 5 feet unless adjacent to a driveway, in which case it could be 2 feet or something because you have the 10-foot driveway.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea. That's interesting. Aaron, do you have any objections to that?
Well, I guess I would just want a little clarification. So we're looking at it would be okay in the side yard provided that your AC unit in that side yard abuts a driveway?
Well, it might be okay anyway.
Right.
I'm saying you'd have less of a setback requirement where there's a driveway.
Yeah, because in your typical 40-foot lot, you're allowed 5-foot setback on one side and then 10 foot for your neighbor. So there's a minimum 15 feet between dwellings. So if on the 5-foot setback lot, the AC unit is right there with the proper screening, the house on the adjacent property is still across the driveway area, and it's still at least 10 feet away.
Well, I can certainly think of situations in my own neighborhood where that probably is not the case, but we don't want to craft language around exceptions. We want to stick with the norm, when we draft these things. So if I understand what you're saying, Aaron, it doesn't make any difference whether there's a driveway there or not in terms of impact on the neighboring residents.
Well, there's a minimum 15-foot separation between dwellings. So typically in some of your denser neighborhoods, you have a 5-foot setback, and then you have the driveway, because that will encompass at least 10 feet wide. So that's your 10-foot setback on the adjacent property. That's typically how these lots have been designed, especially with the new builds.
But there are exceptions.
There's always exceptions.
Yeah.
There's exceptions.
But certainly, I mean, an argument can be made that the norm right now is to allow the AC units to be in the side yard setback right next to a property line with the neighbor's approval.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you can make an argument for that too.
Okay, well, that just helps clarify things for me.
Okay, so go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to weigh in. Yeah, I think I agree with Julie. I think what Aaron had just said, that I guess everyone's side yards, they have their own intention for. So allowing the AC within the 5-foot setback with screening seems appropriate to me. And then how we design the screening requirements and whatnot, I think would be, for me, what the next step would entail.
Okay, anyone who hasn't chimed in on the setback issue yet? No? Okay. So I don't know that we've given you clear direction, Aaron, on exactly what we think that number should be. I think we've all reached the point where, it's the side yard is probably okay, but I don't know that it's clear what the setback should be. Does anyone want to provide any additional direction? I've thrown out 5 feet. I think that's acceptable to me. It sounds like Julie and Joe, you would be in that camp as well. Matt?
So we're saying that the air conditioning unit should be 5 feet from the property line?
No.
That's what I'm throwing out there just as a point of discussion, because I do think we need to provide Aaron with a little bit more direction than we have.
I was referring to if your setback is 5 feet. I have no problems with it being there. If you look I'm looking up specs right now on these. The majority of them against the house have 6 inches away from the house is acceptable. 9 times out of 10 will be 8 inches away because they're not going to put it exactly 6. But most of the units are only 24 or 28 inches wide, and that gives you 34 inches of a 5-foot space. You have more than a foot to 2 foot most of the time before you're at the edge of your property line. And then if you have a 10-foot setback required by building ordinances, you're still 12 feet away from the nearest house. You're not taking up too much land. You're more concerned about the noise. And the new ones that are out here now, if you're building a new house, the SEER ratings and the way they don't run very loud.
So Matt, you're advocating for less than 5 feet then, just to make sure I know where everyone stands.
An ordinance that just meets the manufacturer's requirements.
Okay.
It doesn't exceed the property line. As long as the clearance doesn't exceed the property line, you're fine.
Okay. Which is kind of where we are now, just with the neighbor's approval. Is that right, Aaron?
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
I kind of agree with Matt on that.
Okay.
As well. Just not to have a arbitrary number, but just manufacturer specs or, make sure it's in your own property.
Okay. Julie?
Again, I'm agreeing with Matt on that one. I don't think we need a number. I think it's manufacturer specs.
Okay.
I'd rather not go with manufacturer specs because who knows what manufacturer they're going to get, and I'd like to see it. If you have proper screening, you can put it a foot or two away from the property line. I don't like it, but I mean, if that's it's the reality of our neighborhood, reality of our community. It's what we have. I don't like impacting neighbors, but that's the reality we have. I don't think we want to write our ordinance regarding manufacturer specifications.
And we still have to talk about screening, so we can do that.
That's fine.
Next.
I mean, this community's been this way for years. This has been an ongoing argument for as long as I can remember the planning commission. It's on multiple points here, but it kind of comes with the neighborhood. You know you're going to hear noises from your neighbors' houses. I mean, I sit outside at night and I can listen to every one of my neighbors having a conversation in the house next door. And it's just how the neighborhood is. You're going to have to accept the fact that there is some noises around. We're not living in, 3-acre lots. You're in a 40 by 125 lot or a 50 by 125 lot. It just comes with the territory.
Okay, so I'm relying on Matt for my opinion that the noise levels do not approach nuisance levels from these machines. Usually what you try and do is measure the decibel level at somebody's property line. They've got the right to reasonable quiet outside their house as well as inside their house. You're saying that, they're not going to have noise levels like that. And I'll go along with it as long as you're right. But I do agree with Marty that we shouldn't just reference manufacturer specifications in the ordinance. I just don't think that's the right way to write ordinances. I think we have to have objective standards which everybody can understand, and no matter what manufacturer they use, and future buyers and sellers don't have to get into that. And I just think it should be a objective standard. The number of feet, I don't know if these are quiet machines, if they can be screened. We could probably go right up to a foot or two to somebody's property line. The noise isn't going to be a problem.
So it seems like you would need, I would think, at least 2 feet to provide screening.
Well, Ms. Stern, what is your fence you're referring to? You have like a wood slat fence?
I do. But really what I was going for here was, is it prudent to say we shouldn't do manufacturer's recommendations, but we should do a decibel recommendation?
So the issue,
that creates a whole nother level of complexity. People are going to get a hold of a non-calibrated.
yeah, I'd rather not get into that.
No, what you do.
Y'all are laughing at me. But no, I'm serious.
Only because we've already gone through this like a year ago, and it was like an hour conversation.
Here's what that's all about. You have community noise ordinances, and they specify what's a nuisance level for decibels. It doesn't matter where the noise is coming from if you're in violation of that ordinance. So I don't think our site plan or zoning modification has to go in that direction. I think. Right. Noise nuisances are just a different thing, But as I said, I'm going along with this because I'm taking a expert's word for it that these aren't problematic noise levels.
Lisa.
So I think when we're talking about a setback number or a specific number, right? I think 5 feet in most cases makes it undoable in most of our lots, right? Because they only have that 5 foot setback. So I definitely think it needs to be something smaller than 5 foot. 3 feet, 2 feet. I'm not really sure what the right answer is, but I think 5 makes it like we're making an ordinance that you can't follow.
Okay,
so we're really
fair enough.
saying it's not allowed.
So is everyone? Then let me bring up the next question of screening. Because if everyone's in favor of requiring screening, then we need to be able to fit the screening in. So what are thoughts on screening? I think screening is a good idea. Personally, I don't care if it's a fence or some opaque landscaping, but either one works. Other people's thoughts on screening?
I think I prefer fence.
Okay.
Well, I think a fence or opaque shrubbery of some sort works. Shrubbery is a lot thicker than a fence. If you can fit some shrubbery in there and clearances around the unit in 5 feet, if that's what you have, go for it. What is the right number? 18 inches from the property line. If you do the math, we're gonna be left with, once we fit in the distance from the wall, the unit itself, the clear space on the other side, we're gonna have 18 inches, maybe 20, 24 inches left. Mr. Trotto, is that correct about? Okay.
You're never going to be able to put a shrubbery in between a 5 foot offset. 5 foot property line.
No.
But you could if it was a much larger lot.
It was a large lot, but most houses.
We're talking about the 5 foot. We're talking about minimums here.
The minimum would be 5 foot. There's pretty much no way you're going to fit your AC unit and some kind of shrubbery in there. The only concerns me is you're going to have somebody come in. They're going to put in a 8 foot section of fence, and it's not going to match anything else that's out there. It's going to look horrible.
Yeah, that could totally happen. You're completely.
It happens up on rooftops. I've seen
a lot of screens draw attention to what's happening on, what you don't.
Even look worse.
That's
exactly.
true.
So it's like I said though. There's no good way of answering this one right now. I just think it's just going to keep coming around, revolving and revolving and revolving. But who knows?
Well, I'm sick of talking about it, so I want to come up with something.
I mean, that's one reason why I can say, go back to just manufacturer spec, and as long as it fits on your property with clearances, you meet code. That means.
Well, I don't like leaving anything up to a manufacturer's spec in the ordinances here in Berkley.
That also makes it really hard for our staff to have to try and track down what that specific unit's manufacturer's statement, specs is.
Julie?
So I used to install generators for an electrician, and I used to have to do it in the city of Birmingham. And the only way we could get a generator installed in Birmingham was to submit the specific manufacturer's specs to the city. And so it wasn't making it difficult for the city to look at and say, okay, these are the setbacks that this generator requires. This is exactly what they need. Does this fit in their plan that they want to use? So I don't think it was difficult for the city. It gave off the decibel levels. It gave off all the information. And then the city of Birmingham could say, okay, you know what? Yeah, you can put a generator in here because it meets all of our requirements, which are to meet the specifications that we've designed.
Could I ask a question about that? These specs, do they include setbacks from neighboring property lines as well as?
No, they do not.
I didn't think so, yeah.
No, but they do give setbacks from the house. They give decibel levels at a certain amount of feet from the unit. And so it was giving a good gauge of what was necessary in what we're discussing right now.
So I guess I tend to go more with Marty, Mark, and Lisa on this one in terms of having an actual number to be set back from the property line. I just think it's clear for applicants, for homeowners, for neighbors, personally.
So can the setback from the property line, because I think we're talking two different things sometimes too. Setback, manufacturer setback would be from the dwelling.
Right.
Yeah, and then the property line setback is, the home, the property owners. Can the setback number include screening, and then the screening option is up to, I guess if it's permitted, if that's something that's done. So just say you can only put your air conditioner with screening up to 1 foot from the property line. And then, how you do it, how big your current setback is, can vary depending on the property.
Right, so we could say you could set your unit 1 foot from the property line. It needs to be screened. Screening has to be on your property. I don't think 1 foot provides enough room to put screening.
No, I was saying the 1 foot is including screening.
I still don't think it's enough room. I think you would need at least 2 feet. But that's not based. That's just based on, how wide a shrub might be. What's that?
Yeah, if you use a fence though, or like a little mini screen, you know, like people use for garbage cans and things, like lattice type fencing.
Yep, I know what you're talking about,
it's
and
like
that's what.
2 foot high or something like that. That to me, I'm picturing screening. You would screen it from the street side as well as your property side, and most likely you're going to screen it from your backyard side if your side yard goes into your backyard.
Is that what you were talking about, Matt, with the screening almost being more obtrusive?
Well, once you add in your shrubbery and your screening, you're never going to have enough room in a 5 foot setback. I mean, a 5 foot clear.
Right. If it's a fence, you have room of some
With
sort.
a fence, you can do it, but it's like I said, then you're going to create a different nightmare. You're going to have this ugly piece of fence, and what's going to happen is the builder's going to install it, and the first thing the person's going to do when they move in is tear it out.
But that would be against the ordinance.
And it wouldn't necessarily look different on the side than when your backyard fence starts, right? If you were walking in front and you looked down the side of that house, you would just see a fence. You're not going to see a fence and then the next fence for the backyard.
I'm thinking from a builder perspective, a builder's going to be cheap and put in a 5 foot piece of fence just to screen it.
Yeah,
He's
just
not gonna screen the whole
one
yard.
segment. I think you're thinking of, say you have a chain link fence and all of a sudden there's this one random segment of privacy fence.
Exactly.
That could happen.
It's going to be a piece of cheap womanized lattice that'll fall apart in one winter.
Yep.
Yeah, we have a fence, and that looks worse. That's what you're referring to, right?
Yep.
Which I think is a valid concern.
I mean, I can tell you flat out, my builder put things in my house the day after I got it inspected, I took out.
I mean, but we can specify what materials, and that, you know, a little piece of lattice isn't going to do the trick.
But I guess why would that not do the trick, Lisa?
It's no different than a chain link fence. Sorry, Lisa.
Well, I mean, we can specify whatever materials if you want, right? If you want it to be a wooden fence that goes around it, then it can be a wooden fence that goes around it. If you want it to be chain link or whatever else, then you can do that too. But if your desire is to not have the lattice piece or the chain link piece, then you can write that into it.
But I don't think we could write in to say, you've decided to put your air conditioner on the side of your house. Now you have to put a privacy fence along the entire length of your side yard. Like, we couldn't write that in.
No. But what is the purpose of this? Is it just to hide it? Is it to help muffle the sound as well?
The original idea was to preserve aesthetics within the neighborhood. That's how that discussion got started. I don't know. Anything else?
It moved into acoustics, and that's why this is so difficult.
I hate to go back to saying it's Berkley. I'm sorry, but
you're absolutely right about that.
That go wrong in this city. I mean, there's a house down the street from me. They don't have any side yard because it's so overgrown with trees you can't even see the house. In fact, there's a guy down the street from me who has a bathtub in his yard.
Is this Berkley still talking about?
So where are we landing, I guess, on screening then? Because the more that we're talking, the more I'm getting talked out of screening.
Well, okay. Can I say something about
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
The units were described as what'd you say, Matt? No wider than 30.
I mean, I don't have it up in front of me. I called it up last time. They're not very loud. I mean, it's just not bad. My builder installed ours, and my neighbor liked it so much that it was so quiet that they actually put it in their house, the same one. Because now they don't hear it at all.
I'm asking the size.
My house, I want to say it's basically 26 by 24, and it's 6 inches off the wall. So you got 30 inches in a 5 foot. You got 30 inches of clearance afterwards to my property line.
Okay, so it's 2 feet wide. Your unit's 2 feet wide.
About 26 inches, I'd say. I'm just guessing. I don't have a tape measure with me, but it's not very big.
In a 5 foot space, you'll have 18 to 24 inches left over, give or take.
Give or take.
Almost 2 feet.
To me, you don't even need to require a fence. You could just say you could put a shrub there or something.
Not a lot of space for a shrub. You're on your neighbor's property.
Your shrub will be on your neighbor's property before you know it, too.
Well, that would be they would have to maintain it. I'm just offering it as a choice, for somebody that didn't want to put a fence up.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not talking about hiding very much. We're only talking about hiding 2 feet. We don't need a elaborate stockade here.
I think, Kristen, I think I'm leaning towards you that I'm not sure screening is even, I guess I'm thinking about it, like allowing it on the side, screening may just seem like that's a cursory, that's just something that could go wrong, I think, ultimately. So, because if, like Lisa mentioned, I don't know what's the intention of the screening now at that point.
It was aesthetics.
It's all before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm erring towards an air conditioner might just look better than some random shrubbery that doesn't go with anything else. Because I think any homeowner that moves it to the side will probably take the inclination to do it themselves and make it look good if they want. Otherwise, it might be too obtrusive to have random arborvitaes or random lattice fence sticking in the side yard. So.
Yeah, I think if we're doing it solely for aesthetics, I don't know. Then I start to not feel super comfortable because it's not like an air conditioner is an unusual house piece, right? They come with most houses. And I don't want to overly regulate what people's homes can look like, right? And so if it's solely for aesthetics, then I start to feel like we're getting into regulating taste.
I agree with that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else on the air conditioners?
Well, Ms. Chairman, this is Marty. I guess I'm beginning to agree with you on this one, that we're just creating a bigger mess than what we have with just the units out there. And maybe that even I'm against the generators and all that. I have been, but as we try to talk through this, we're not really getting anywhere. We try to talk through this. We have a situation that in these small setbacks in Berkley, as Commissioner Trotto says, because that's where we are, there may be no solution. And the solution, and we'll get into this later on rooftops, is quite possibly a bigger issue than the problem. And it is what it is.
Getting into the whole rooftop thing, to bring it up, but actually mechanical codes actually call for screening around them for fall protection.
Within a so many feet of the edge. Yeah.
Yep. That's a whole other situation.
Right.
Aaron, do you feel like you have some direction on this one now?
I have some, so we're looking at a couple of things, the screening, I just want to address, it's for the aesthetics for the neighbors to make sure that they're not looking at a piece of mechanical or exterior equipment, but it is also to muffle the sound. This would be in lieu of giving them that approval letter that is our current policy. That way the neighbor isn't more or less in charge of what goes on to an applicant's property. But it provides them some screening, some noise barriers, so that if the adjacent neighbor is outside or have the windows open, they're not looking at or hearing the loud exterior appliance going off in the middle of the summer. I will draft some proposed language for next month, and hopefully that can steer our direction or steer our conversation a little bit easier.
I thought we agreed to no screening, or no requirement for screening.
So
I
I
was
think
just saying
we did.
that was the reasoning behind opening the discussion for the screening. Wasn't just aesthetics.
Okay. So if you can draft something up based generally on what we talked about, I don't think we're all ever going to agree on this one. But I think we all do agree we want to get this kind of settled and move on from this discussion. It's gone on a long time.
Aaron, if I may?
Yes.
Aaron, is this a big issue with people coming to the building department?
Well, we install where we issue permits for air conditioning units all the time, every day, especially with the new builds. There has been some neighbors and some residents who do not like the AC units in the side yard.
Understood.
So they have, or one individual who has brought this up fairly recently was very adamant that it is considered an accessory structure. And that's where, looking back at the past history of what has been going on in the past 5 years, I saw that this had been a discussion that had been ongoing, but had never been finalized. So while some people had considered an accessory structure, it was never codified that way. And so our practice in the building department of allowing them in the side yard with no setback requirement, as long as the neighbor signs a letter of approval, more or less, that they could go in the side yard. So that has been the ongoing practice, but the uncertainty of classifying it as an accessory structure or an exterior appliance left a couple of residents in a state of concern because they didn't want that to go without being monitored or regulated.
What we've determined is not, I believe in our conversation, we've gone around and around so much. Now that we've determined it's exterior appliance, it is not an accessory structure.
Correct. It's just a matter of making sure that we codify that as such.
So that clears up a lot of that.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. You finish. I interrupted.
So when we draft this ordinance, since we're not codifying them as an accessory structure and they are an exterior appliance, we will then be able to include them in a list of what constitutes an exterior appliance and what regulations, whatever regulations we want to that end for their installation.
Okay, but we have made that distinction at this point, I believe. We all agree.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that's progress.
Oh,
Okay, Mark, did you have something?
yeah, I hopefully without rambling, I can kind of summarize where I'm at on this. So we're trying to fit square pegs into round holes here. We have a post-war community where now we've developed all these modern amenities, and we're dealing with an old-fashioned grid narrow lot layout and trying to accommodate these amenities. So I guess I feel obligated to the community to try to do that in the least obtrusive way possible. So I wouldn't want to just totally give up on the idea of screening. I would hope that Aaron would continue to look into that for us, and perhaps we come to a conclusion about what might be reasonable according to flexibility. What I do feel strongly about is that we need objective standards. We need to write this in terms of feet setback, and so I mean, if that helps any, that's just where I'm coming from. Yes, we have to expect people to kind of bend and accommodate the density of this community, but if we can find ways to make it more livable and accommodate the new technologies that all of our homes have, we should explore those ways to the nth degree. I think we have an obligation to do that. So if that helps any, helps the discussion. That's what I had to say.
Okay, so next up on this one is generators then. I guess the question is, do we want to treat those the same as air conditioners? Or should they be relegated to the rear yards? This is less of an issue with the grandfathering. I don't think this is an issue at all, right, with any existing generators that have not received a variance. Aaron, is that right?
Correct. And the ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals, had looked at the generators at one point and had determined them to be an accessory structure. This is kind of the nexus of it all. So we have been regulating them to the rear yard for the last couple of years, unless somebody wanted them to be in the side yard, in which case they'd have to go for a variance. But there isn't a whole lot of, again, there is no language separating generators or AC units from accessory structures. So that's where we are. Why we're
So we're actually lumping them together now. That's what we're talking about.
if
All
we
right.
want to, yes.
Yes, right. Do we want to lump them together? Do we want to treat them differently?
This doesn't get any easier.
Well, it's a little bit easier, right? Because we don't have this whole crop of existing generators in the side yard.
Well, that's true.
So at least there's that.
Can I interject something here?
Sure.
For generators, because we don't have it out there, that makes life a lot easier. But I would just put it in the position of they're supposed to be in the back. They're required to be in the backyard unless you have a lot that's 60 foot wider, 60 foot or wider. And then in which case you have 20, 30 feet between your houses. Go off of lot size on that one, and I think that might resolve the problem.
Well, it depends on where the house is on the lot.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, we have 100-foot wide lots, and my neighbor's garage, which is a new build, is 5 feet off their property line, and they have 35 feet on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So that isn't necessarily.
Can we put a note there? Must be at least 20 feet away from the nearest structure.
Yeah, we could put a required setback or something like that.
Mr. Trotto, are they in fact more obtrusive, generators more obtrusive than air conditioning units?
They are louder than mine. Are we talking residential or are we talking commercial?
We're talking 40-foot lots, residential.
40-foot lot, you'll never get into the side yard. Not a 5'7", not a 5'7".
Okay, well that pretty much settles that.
It won't fit in there, but if you have an 8-foot setback, there's a possibility it could.
Okay. So maybe there's a case where we say if you have an X number of square feet on your side, it has to be in a side yard of X number of square feet, whatever that is.
Yep.
Or greater.
Julie, did you want to chime in?
Sorry, Julie.
It's okay. I feel like if you have an air conditioner already in your backyard and you have a 40-foot wide lot and you want to put a generator in, you're kind of stuck. You can't put a generator necessarily in the back if you have a 40-foot wide lot. So to take it away, if the air conditioner is already in the back, you're then telling people on a 40-foot wide lot, they have no room to put their generator.
You're not going to meet the electrical NEC code clearances requirements.
Right.
It physically won't meet it.
I've done it. You can. If you have a driveway, you can.
Well, yeah.
Driveway, yeah, but that's another neighbor's property though.
So you're using the neighbor's property then to meet the code requirement.
Right.
What if they put
What
up
happens if the neighbor takes down a house or so, and then they can build where they want, right? And now you're no longer meeting the code requirements?
I understand what you're saying, but I think that to take away a generator being in a side yard is not beneficial to the city of Berkeley with all the new builds we have coming in and the people wanting to have generators coming in.
But there's not a lot of new builds on a 40-foot lot.
No, there is.
Well, they are, but they're wall to wall.
Yeah.
They are. Yeah, 40, 50-foot lots, they are.
I'm not a new build, but I would put a generator in.
I'm just saying from an NEC code requirement, you're not going to get the 3 feet of clearance in the front of it that you need where you have live loss.
For a permanent
installation.
So I would have a big problem with using your neighbor's yard to meet clearance requirements for the code.
Yeah, you put up a chain link fence.
Then you have an ungrounded structure, in which case you're not meeting code.
Right.
In fact, you put a tree there, it's an ungrounded structure, it still doesn't meet code.
Right.
You're saying if your neighbor were to put a tree, Matt?
You put a bush, shrub,
yeah,
flower, I mean, it's still an ungrounded item. If you touch it when you're touching the live bus, you're going to electrocute yourself.
Okay, so where did we start talking about this? It was, Matt, I think you started with saying...
I originally looked up their code requirements and the clearances required by the generator manufacturers, and in which case, you're required to have at least a minimum of 1 foot off the wall. Most of them are 24 to 36 inches, so now you're at 3 feet. Then they require another 2 foot of clearance in front of it for working maintenance. I mean, Julie used to install this. How much working maintenance do they require in front of them?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
When you used to work for the company you used to work for, what was the working maintenance clearances required to the front of them?
I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have that.
So, I mean, I'm just looking at it from the perspective I've seen in the past. Now, I don't do residential. I do the big, massive commercial ones, in which case these things would never even fit on these lots. But I'm just thinking clearance-wise from an inspector looking at it, it's never going to be able to pass.
What I've seen from when I was doing it, requirements of a generator were pretty much exactly the same as an air conditioner. The way
So I guess
residential generators, that's what I saw.
So I guess that, Aaron, is question number one. I think we need some additional information about what kind of clearance requirements there really are before we could even determine whether or not this is feasible in a side yard, on what size lot it would be feasible, and what a required setback would be if we were willing to consider that.
Understood.
No, you don't.
And we might be.
I'm just disappointed. You know, it was, you know, kind of neat to have them lumped into this exterior appliance, but they're completely different animals. And as we talk, it sounds more and more like they are different. We have to treat them differently.
It does seem like that.
Pardon me?
It does seem like that, Marty.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. Well, we beat this up enough for tonight, and so we can move on.
I have one more thing as part of this that we have to talk about. That's the commercial units. Aaron was looking for some direction on the commercial screening.
Are you talking about rooftops, Aaron?
On-site and rooftops, yes. It's
Do
not
we get
common
all the
for them to be
commercial units
located
on-
on the site.
Do we get a lot of those on grade?
Well,
I
you could
haven't
have the
seen-
you could have the generators on grade, right? I've seen a lot of that.
Well, yeah.
It would be more
anything in the
common here in Berkeley for them to be rooftop, considering the constraints of a lot of these sites. But we do have a couple of properties that do have them. And if it's a matter of new developments coming in, if they do have the square footage on their lot to put them on site rather than on the roof, what are the requirements for that?
Is there anything in the DDA design guidelines that talks about this at all?
So most communities, I think, do require screening,
Right.
landscape screening on the ground.
Well, especially, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Marty.
Well, I was going to, especially if you're abutting residential.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think it would make sense for us to be in line with all of our peer communities.
Yep, I can draft up some language about screening on site and certainly look at some rooftop mechanical screening as well, if the commission is leaning that way as well.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of commercial, is there any design trends or anything to indicate that we'll see more on ground than rooftop or vice versa? You know, is there anything like that we should be anticipating when we write our ordinance, or is it just all over the map depending on the size and configuration of the lot?
I would say the majority of the plans that I've seen over the course of my career have been rooftop units. Kristen or Jeff, maybe you could chime in on your respective communities, but the majority of what I see have been rooftop mechanical equipment.
All right.
Yeah, I would agree with that too, except for the generators. That's the only thing it seems like that's on site.
Yeah, we have had in the last couple at the old racetrack, obviously they've had some huge development over there, and it's been grade generators, and we have required sound. It's mostly the fencing or it's for sound more than anything else.
And there's a big difference between existing buildings and new construction. These old buildings like we have in town, they may not be able to support rooftop units without a lot of reinforcing, and then throw screens up there, which are sails in the wind. They just may not be able to do it. So, but that's another discussion for another day.
So does that give you some direction on that, Aaron? It looks like we're looking at what other communities are doing.
Yep.
Okay.
Check out Royal Oak. They had a pretty good one. I just recently went through Royal Oak on a project, and they were fairly thorough. But they also got into sound decibel levels and a lot of other things.
Yep, I'll put together not only some comparative communities on the rooftops in the commercial units, but some draft language for the residential air conditioning and some other additional info on clearance regulations for generators.
Great.
So we have a little bit more focused discussion next time.
Also, Aaron, I'm sending you just one of the installation manuals for Generac, which talks about the residential installation. And this is a basic 11 kW unit, and I don't think it'll ever fit into a 5-foot setback.
Okay, thank you very much.
We'll do that in a second. Because you need 18 inches against the wall and 36 inches on the other side of it. So, and then you have the 24 inches, you're looking at 6 feet just by itself.
Yeah, it may just not be feasible.
Okay, moving on then to the side yard projections. Before we get into that, Aaron, can I ask a quick question? The master plan items that you wanted us to cover tonight, would this be our final look at the items that are in there?
No.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is just because we have a whole discussion on side yard projections, and I want to make sure everyone's devoting the proper amount of time to the master plan. I don't want to just kind of tack it on at the end when we're all running out of energy to discuss.
Right, and it's included on the last one in this agenda because it is more of an update and to look at things over. When we get into that, we'll talk about what's forthcoming in the next couple of months.
Okay.
Which will be a little higher up on the agenda.
Yep, I just wanted to confirm you weren't looking for a big discussion on that item tonight. Okay. Side yard projections then.
Okay.
What do you have for us on that?
All right, so this is another continued discussion from last month. As we previously mentioned, a building official many years ago had interpreted an ordinance that the masonry and box fireplace units are regulated as one and the same, not considered a projection, as they were not part of the livable space. Therefore, whether it's a masonry or a box fireplace, there is no regulations on projections. It can go as far or as wide and on that wall as needed to by the developer or manufacturer. So part of our discussion last month was how to regulate chimneys, the masonry in the box, as a separate type of projection. And we got into a type of formula, but I wanted to bring that back to discuss with you this evening so that way we can get some language in front of you for next month. So if we want to look at chimneys, masonry, or fireplace and regulate them separately than other cantilever type design features such as a bay window, what type of formula would you want for that? And also, do we want to stay with the current formula of X projection for 30% of the entire wall? They want in the same? How do we want to move forward with that?
Okay, so do we want to look at chimneys and related items as not part of the side yard projections? Is kind of question one. Is that right, Aaron?
Yes.
Okay, so what are everyone's thoughts on that?
Well, if I may.
Yep, Marty?
That was not the intent of the ordinance. And I think we talked about this last month. The intent of the ordinance was chimneys, whether they're go down to a foundation or whether they're hung off the side, is part of the projections on the side of a building. Whatever the projection is, it affects the neighbor's dwelling. And like I said, I don't know if Mr. Richardson recalls. I think we discussed this last month. We did not. That interpretation from the building official is not what I believe or I recall the intent of the ordinance was. Mark, do you have a input on that?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
We
We were talking about all projections, and we
Yeah.
didn't separate chimneys out.
No, we didn't from bay windows or any of the
No.
other accoutrements. That's right.
No, and the livable space had nothing to do with it. Most of them are livable space, a bay window or an overhang on the second floor, whatever. But we didn't. I don't think that was part of it.
No, that distinction was never made. I don't think.
Right. I don't think so. No.
Okay, so all projections are treated the same.
That was the intent of the previous
Okay.
ordinance when we drafted this.
Okay.
And I think I said last month, it doesn't mean, we can't update this or change it, but that the intent was all projections were the same.
So thoughts on updating or changing it then?
I guess my question is, why does it need, I mean, besides the fact that somebody found a loophole or whatever, like, why does it need to change? Is there a compelling reason that it should be something other than what it is?
So we should definitely, even if we don't want, if we want to treat them all the same, we should definitely clarify it in the ordinance. It sounds like for sure. Other than creating a situation where people can maximize their space a little bit more, I don't think there's a compelling reason that it has to change. Right? That would be the reason.
Oh yeah. Add more square footage to their house.
Right. That would be the reason.
But it imposes on the neighbor. It affects the neighbors.
It does affect.
I mean, and safety to some degree. We have setbacks so that fire departments can easily get in between houses. I mean, there are reasons besides airflow and all of that kind of stuff, right? There are legitimate reasons for why we have side setbacks. And I mean, like I said before, I feel like we just keep trying to jam stuff into that area.
Yes, you're absolutely correct on that. So what we tried to come up with was this formula of how much do we want to allow. And this probably, Mark, if you recall, doesn't this go back to when the big boxes started getting built? And we saw this happening in Berkley, these large homes, and we didn't want the second floors projecting 16 inches, whatever, over the first floor. We wanted to limit how much projection they could have. Wasn't it the bigger homes?
Yeah, it was the designs that we were seeing.
Right.
Raised the issue.
Right.
Right. It wasn't remodeling jobs. It was the new bigger homes. Yeah, you're correct.
Okay, remodeling could do it too. I mean, there's no distinction there. So anyway, we came up with a formula. Is it the right formula? I don't know. And but that's what the previous building inspector or official said. That's not, I don't believe, was the intent of the ordinance. So,
have we had trouble with the formula, Erin?
There's just been a couple of residents who have voiced their concern that the projections were going beyond what is being permitted. And that's where the determination or the understanding from a previous building official that projections for fireplaces were not included in that formula. So if that's not the case, and if that wasn't the intent, then we can just make sure that that's clarified and make sure that we move forward. But there was enough history there of that happening to make sure that we wanted to make sure we're all on the same page on these projections. So if it wasn't the intent to lump chimneys in with bay windows and other types of cantilevers, then we can separate them out as other communities have done. I noted that in last month's review letter. But if we want to continue to regulate them the same, whether it's masonry, box, bay window, or otherwise, then we can just easily clarify that and make sure that going forward, that's how we do it.
that was the intent.
So does anyone have any objections to just clarifying things?
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
That works for me.
Fine with it too.
Okay.
Agreed.
So we should have very clear direction for you there then, Erin, on
Yes,
this.
thank you. I'll get you the draft language for you next month.
Wait, let's talk about it a little more.
That'll be an easy one. No.
Marty, you have some more comments?
Yeah, let's drag it out a couple more years.
No,
I've
we have
got
a marathon
philosophy
going
to share with you about this.
Okay, so that brings us to master plan. So do you want to tell us what the update's about, Erin?
Yeah, so Carla Wortman has provided some materials for you in your packet, and it's an update on the master plan process. So in there, you'll see the future land use map and some other mock-ups that they have here. The master plan steering committee looked at this last week and had a really great discussion, but they asked for some revisions to be incorporated. I'm just going to go over a couple of those with you briefly, and then you know, take a look at it. Let me know if you have any concerns or any other items that you'd like to see addressed in this, but this will be coming back to you next month for further discussion. So the draft map, as you'll see, it removed the institutional use that is currently on our current future land use map. The master plan steering committee felt that this category should be retained as places owned by the city, school district, places of worship, so that way they're more or less protected in the future land use. There was discussion to decrease the types of corridors with the multiple character areas, specifically the live-work designation that's proposed on 11 Mile east of Coolidge. The steering committee asked if this could be a different classification, appropriately reflecting the present and the anticipated future land uses. I know this is something that the Planning Commission had discussed in previous meetings and during the last master plan go through. So they don't want to eliminate a live work, but more or less encapsulate what is already existing and what we could, what we might see there in the future. Moving on, the potential parking or building expansion areas. This was generally liked, but there were a few parcels that were identified either that should be included or were missed or should be removed from that expansion area. So just a couple of tweaks there that just needs to be clarified. So moving on, we had the missing middle housing scavenger hunt. So I'd like to thank everyone who sent in pictures and provided some images for us. We received quite a few. They were included in your packet materials just for your reference. It was surprising to see how many duplexes and apartment buildings we do have in this community. For the most part, you see it's just, I mean, it's zoned mostly single family residential. So to see so many duplexes in the community was a really nice thing to see. We also had a discussion with Jody Mariano. She's the urban designer from Tesca Associates, who's been working with Carlisle Wortman to help develop the design guidelines for the 11 Mile and Greenfield areas. Cottage clusters and courtyard townhomes were identified as the most appropriate for Berkley along Greenfield. And those images and descriptors are included in your packet. Lastly, Jody Mariano shared a draft approach for a commercial design guidelines for an 11 Mile property. This design would focus on showing how an existing site can incorporate or be enhanced with paint, signage, parking improvements, and some additional landscaping. The steering committee liked this approach, and Ms. Mariano is going to continue to work on the guidelines for the 11 Mile district and the rest of the other corridors. So yeah, we just, there's nothing to be decided upon this evening. It was more or less, this is what we've done last for the master plan steering committee. We wanted you to have kind of the draft future land use map so you could give any thoughts, any questions, any comments. We can incorporate those, and then it'll go back to the master plan steering committee next month, and then it'll be before you at the end of November. So you're welcome to, we can talk about it now, or if you want to send me your comments or your thoughts at a later date, you're more than welcome to do that as well.
Does anyone have any comments on this so far?
Aaron, could you define the residential corridor, please?
Let me pull up the map real quick.
Unless I missed it. It's along Southfield and along Huntington Woods on 11 Mile.
Hold on one second. Okay.
Unless I blew by it, I didn't see it really designed anywhere.
The residential corridor is all along Greenfield.
Right. What is it?
That, I'm sorry?
What is a residential corridor? That's the least, to me, that's the least residential strip that we should have, but that it is residential. What is
Okay, so that's where the incorporation of the cluster cottages and the townhomes that I mentioned, those would be incorporated into those areas. So if there were properties or sites that could be combined to make these larger sites, these would be appropriate for those types of developments. So it would still be residential. It would just be more focused on the missing middle to allow for denser areas for residential.
Okay, and just to get a jab in, because the planning commission wasn't asked about any of this stuff, is that really economically feasible there to build these expensive? Well, that's not fair. To build these units, is that something that the steering committee actually thinks will work along there?
Well, we're looking at what could possibly work somewhere, and this was something that the planning commission had determined that residential along Greenfield was a good idea in the previous master plan. So we're just kind of going off there and trying to incorporate what could drive development in these areas that would allow to encompass the missing middle. And
okay, I'm not arguing. I'm just, and a couple of us raised this issue a month or two ago that I really wish we were part of these conversations, because this is what we're supposed to be doing. And,
right, and the
kind of disappointing.
And we've talked about this. The steering committee is the one who's been doing a lot of the heavy legwork, and this is going to be part of my update. But the master plan steering committee has done a lot of the heavy legwork, and now that the community engagement stuff is done and a lot of the nitty gritty is done, now is when the planning commission is going to be involved doing the overall review of the document itself. So you're not being cut out of the process.
Okay, I didn't say cut out. I just said I wish we were I wish we were already in it. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Well, the process itself got delayed because of COVID, and we had to revamp our entire community engagement strategy. So we are behind in our overall schedule and timeline by a couple of months. But this was always going to be how this was, given the fact that we have the master plan steering committee that is meeting monthly to have these discussions, so that way when the planning commission meets, they already have something that's a little bit more formulated and vetted by community stakeholders that you can look at instead of go through every detail.
Let me ask you another question. Again, I'm not arguing with you, Aaron. Please, I'm just it's just the process. Mention community stakeholders. I see this big black line, the corridor expansion. Did the community stakeholders agree that this is a good idea? We've been talking about this for the 20 years I've been on the planning commission, and people do not like seeing that line of expansion. Mm-hmm. That is a big no-no. Mm-hmm. So when the stakeholders, and I hear the stakeholders think this is a good idea, that gets the torches and pitchforks out. Unless everybody changed their mind in the last 5 or 10 years, but that's a big deal.
So if I can interject a little bit, the thought process. So the black dotted lines, instead of straight up saying that like the goal is to rezone it, the goal is to say those would be appropriate to be combined, to be rezoned if something happened and a builder acquired those properties, then it would be appropriate to combine those, which I think maybe calms people down because it keeps their homes at a residential price, and if they choose to sell to somebody, then it may go forward, but nothing's going to happen before they agree to do that.
Well, I understand all that, and as you know, I've been through this a couple of times, Lisa.
Right.
We talked about many times straightening the line, and it was not well received. And I see that here. And maybe people change their minds. We weren't talking about rezoning. We were talking about exactly what you said. and it was not well received at all. So I'm just throwing that out because I was there.
So how, can I interject for a second, Marty? Because I don't want to lose your train of thought of what you're talking about. So how is that any different than just changing the future land use designation and keeping it, designated as a future commercial use, let's say, but not changing the zoning? I mean, isn't it just the same thing, but in a different, right? I want to make sure we're being transparent.
I understand. Stakeholders that aren't involved in planning don't understand the difference between future land use and rezoning.
So, and I want to, going back to the issues that it came up a number of years ago with the mapping and things, I want to make sure that on these maps we're being crystal clear about what is intended. And if it is intended to potentially allow a rezoning of those properties, and we're saying it would be in compliance with a future land use map because of this dotted line corridor, we should be crystal clear and say, no, these properties are designated as this future land use. They will not be rezoned right now. But if someone were to come in as a builder and say, I've acquired the property along 12 Mile and I've acquired the property behind it and I now want to rezone the property behind it, we would say, well, the future land use map, that would be in compliance with the future land use map. And we as a staff would recommend, or as a planning commission would recommend, approval of that rezoning because it's in compliance with the map. I feel like with this corridor setup, we're putting the staff in a really awkward position. Are we saying it's in compliance with the map or is it not in compliance with the map? Are we saying to the community members that there's this corridor that maybe we would rezone and maybe we wouldn't, depending on what? I just want to make sure we're just being very, very clear.
I agree with you 100%. I'm just saying this was a big, big deal. And people, no matter how many times you explained it, and like I said, I'm not disagreeing that it's not a good idea. I'm just saying we have to be ready. This is a big deal because people say, well, that's my house. What are you doing to my property? And you can explain it 10 different ways and it means nothing to them.
Right. And I think you're right, Marty, that people have a tough time understanding the difference between future land use and rezoning. And I feel like introducing this other corridor designation and this dotted line makes it even more confusing.
Well, I'm just making a statement that everybody must be ready for, unless everybody changed their minds in the last whatever years. But this was, we talked about, we called it straightening the line. And this is exactly what we were talking about. And it was not a happy experience. So, and I'm not saying it's not a bad idea. I'm just getting everybody prepared that this may become a big issue because people see it as a taking of their property in some sense.
Okay, so we do keep stressing how much education has to come with all of these concepts and steps, right? Because
I hope I'm wrong.
Look, I wasn't on the commission when you were trying to straighten the line, but of course I was on the commission during the form-based code, which was accompanied by a map. So, I take what you're saying to heart. I understand exactly what you're talking about. And I told our consultants to be very, very careful with the maps, for the very reasons that you're raising. But a couple of things. First of all, this is a right now. This is give and take between the steering committee and the commission. I don't really share your concerns that the commission is being cut out of the discussion. The discussion is really just starting. And there are two planning commissioners in this steering committee, which, provides at least one avenue for a liaison. But there's going to be a very robust discussion within the planning commission itself over these very ideas, and nothing is set in stone. Nothing. It's not like the steering committee decided something and we just approve it or reject it. It's a dynamic process, as I understand it. So, we're trying to get the grunt work out of the way so that our own discussions will be more efficient, more facilitated. I want to reassure you along those lines. But the rubber's got to meet the road somewhere. If we're either planning for the future or we're not. If we're planning for the future, that means the community is going to change, and we have to figure out how to communicate that.
Absolutely,
that's the issue, and
that is the issue.
Got to be really careful with maps, very careful with maps. But I'm just stressing that this planning commission is going to be directly involved in that discussion. As far as I'm concerned, it is anyway.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to address the dotted line just a little bit because, if you look, the dotted line does go around and encompass some of the single family residential properties. But if we were to look at a development zone or an opportunity zone, something like that, we would be, in a sense, not rezoning it, that's not the right word, but changing the future classification of how that property could be used. So if it wanted to be rezoned, the way it's written right now is that it could stay single family residential and it would not be in violation of a future land use map if they wanted to do anything for it. But it is part of an opportunity area for growth and expansion if a developer, if a property, if something were to happen in the future. So, I mean, I understand that there's concern there, but it's not, there's not any fallout here for taking someone's property because they would still be part of the future land use for single family neighborhoods.
Right, but I guess if I'm building an addition on my single family home that's in a single family zoning district, but is master planned for commercial, that future land use designation doesn't affect me. It only affects me if I want to, tear down my house and put up a store or something, right? I guess how does a commercial future land use designation negatively affect a single family property? I mean, it doesn't affect it you can still refinance, you can still rebuild if your house is destroyed by a fire.
Are you asking me?
No, I'm asking Aaron.
Oh, okay.
Well, I guess, I mean, to that end, if someone's living in that house, and this is the discussion that we're having, if someone looks at the parcel that they've lived on for 30 years that has been part of the single family future land use, and all of a sudden we're designating it as commercial, wouldn't that have the same negative connotation to it as they would look at as a rezoning, rather than it's still yellow, it's still fine, it's just part of it's just included in this dotted area rather than changing the color scheme of it?
Yeah, my concern is that we're just muddying the water then. If we are intending that, I'm the border property to the commercial corridor on 12 Mile, and my neighbor's property and my property and everyone else's is now in this dotted line, then the neighbors on either side of me could come in and sell their properties to commercial developers who could develop them as one piece, just as you're talking about, and I could end up with commercial on either side of me, which I want to make sure that if I'm a potential buyer, and I know most buyers don't do this, but for example, my sister owns a house that backs up to the properties that line Campbell and Royal Oak, and when she purchased her house, like, you better believe I told her, well, you're pretty close to a major road. You need to look at the future land use map and see what's planned for the properties around you and the properties abutting Campbell, because you might not be abutting residential one day. Property owners should be able to look at a future land use map and clearly see what the properties around them are intended to be. And my concern is with this corridor thing, it's not clear. It's not clear to me, as a planning commissioner or as a planner, what is a corridor designation and how is it any different than a future land use designation? Is it just the same thing with another name and a different color? So I guess that's my big concern. And we can get into it more, like you said, when we talk about this a little bit more in depth, but Marty kind of sparked the conversation and I just threw it out there.
Are we saying the same thing, kind of?
Yeah, I think we are saying the same thing. I just want to make sure, we're very transparent. I don't think I think this is changing the future land use designation by another name, I guess is what I'm saying. And I don't want to add another name. I want to make sure it's as simple as it can be. So I have some other comments, Erin, but since you just said we could email them, I'll just do that. I mean, they're fairly, much more minor, and we can get into this discussion further. But does anyone else have comments on this or questions?
Is
Hey, it's
the,
Greg.
oh,
Go ahead,
Richard.
Greg, go ahead.
I just had a question. How did they draw the line going up Woodward? Because it just seems like the other ones I can kind of get combining, but that one still looks like jagged, and then some are more than others. Was there, or I can email this too if it's a lengthy reply. Just to save everyone's time.
The jagged parts that are south of, say, Wiltshire, going down, they looked at, kind of how the properties were aligning, and some of those are, they're zoned for single family, but they might have a duplex on it. So those types of areas might be better used for parking or any other kind of expansion to service the Woodward corridor. So it was just kind of following the land use pattern as it was shown in the aerials.
I think
But everything north of that along Brookline is deed restricted, as we've discussed before. So nothing there was touched.
Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, but I recall that the jagged nature of that line has to do with the way the lot lines run along there. That would be the short answer to that question. And there was actually a couple of suggestions to tweak that, as Aaron mentioned previously, to incorporate more appropriate properties for parking expansion.
Thank you, both.
And Aaron, just another question. Is the potential corridor expansion different than an opportunity zone? Or how is it different? I'm just asking because I'm seeing this for the first time, here the last
I did call it an opportunity zone. I apologize. I didn't mean to overlap the opportunity zone with the potential corridor. That was just my poor choice of words.
Well, I meant on the map here. There's an opportunity zone behind.
That's what I meant.
Yeah,
that was just my poor choice of words to use opportunity and the commercial or the potential corridor expansion zone as one and the same. It was just my poor choice of words.
They are the same.
The opportunity is the light pink area.
I see that. That's behind La Salette.
Right, that's right behind La Salette. Those are areas that are expansive enough that could be developed into other things, but they are large enough where they could be developed on their own. So, I mean, it's part of the potential corridor expansion area as it's included in the dotted line, but it's wouldn't be anything that would be outside of what it's being used for now. Does that make any sense?
Well, no, I guess I'm missing something. Isn't the potential corridor expansion kind of an opportunity zone? Kind of. I mean, La Salette just happens to line up. I'm just asking, without a lengthy definition.
Yeah, because behind La Salette School is the two vacant parcel areas that are, just parking areas, but have opportunities to be developed into something else in the more near future. Whereas the potential corridor expansion is.
Well, I just see word potential and opportunity. Those two words are pretty close together by definition. I'm just asking questions because that's so. I've written down define after both of those when I was reading this the other day. So
yeah, and this future land use map with all these classifications, this will come with a very large narrative explaining exactly what.
This is just a draft. I understand.
Very much draft.
Because there's a lot of other potential opportunity zones in Berkeley. That's I can see 3 or 4 here, so that I'm aware of. So and we can talk about that when it comes to us, I guess. That's the kind of things we'll be talking about. So, okay. And
well, if you have thoughts or ideas on that, feel free to send them to me so we can make sure we can look at them before the next meeting.
Okay. I'll forget, but okay. And the the Gateway Corridor, I understand those. It's not quite downtown, but it's the entry into Berkley. I understand that. Okay.
Can we touch on the missing middle scavenger hunt section of this? I mean, just looking at this, I'm not against missing middle, but I mean, looking at this, the majority of the stuff that I see that's in Berkley, with the exception maybe the one on Catalpa is well maintained, but a lot of it is very poorly maintained that I look at. I don't see anywhere on our drawings that show our current map as to where, if there's any expansion into the missing middle kind of scenario, the multifamily dwelling houses. It shows some of the locations on the existing land use map. Is there going to be any changes to that? Because I'm trying to, if we do put that in there, that was one of the big issues that popped up in the last master plan was the multifamily dwellings and where they wanted to put them. And I don't see any place that's been brought up as for new locations of it. And if there is any restrictions, because I'll be honest, the multifamily housing that I've seen going on in Berkley, even the new stuff that's been built, I don't care much for. In Los Alette's the cleanest that I've seen. If anything, I'd like to keep it on the main corridors and avoid the actual single-family housing areas.
So I think they were talking about some of that missing middle, Matt, along Greenfield and 11 Mile. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And frankly, when I look through these photographs, as Marty again, when I look through most of these photographs, I say, hey, look at all the opportunity zones. But maybe that wasn't the intention here, but that's the first thing that dawned on me. I agree with you, Mr. Trotto.
And then one thing I will say, though, even the ones that do pop up in the middle of the city, I have one down the street from my house, and they're regularly visited by the police because the person who's renting it is not the most upstanding person. And right now, they're not paying any rent, so they're not going to move out anytime soon. So, but I mean, I find multifamily housing in general seems to bring more of a problem than it does help our city.
But we do have to make sure we have a variety of housing types and are
absolutely
accounting for all of the different
Here's
ways that people want to live and stages of life.
We need new building stock, but we do need it.
Julie?
I don't think as a planning commission, we should immediately say that any sort of multifamily housing is going to bring detriment to our city. I happen to live at the end of a street of two of those buildings that were pictured in the multifamily scavenger hunt. And I have no issues where I live.
Okay.
Actually, I live by three of them, to be honest with you. And they're all rentals. And I don't think that we need to be so quick to say this isn't going to work for our city. I think there's ways that it could work for our city.
Well, Ms. Mark, I agree with that. And the problem is that there will be a faction within this town that is almost violently opposed to any innovations like this. On the other hand, I don't necessarily agree with Matt about his characterization of multifamily because the whole impetus behind the missing middle idea is that tastes are changing. You know, demographics change, housing tastes change, lifestyles change, and housing needs change with those. That's what we're trying to get at with the missing middle. We're not trying to carve out the wrong side of the tracks for somebody here. We're trying to accommodate these changes, which we can't do anything about. We just have to respond to them to remain a viable community. That's how I look at this whole process.
And I think it's important too to recognize that we do need to accommodate all different income levels within the city as well, and provide places so that we can keep, so that we can work towards having a diverse community where everyone's welcome and we're able to provide a place that everyone can afford at different price points and different types and styles of housing that people might prefer over others.
That's a speech you're going to have to be careful delivering as well. But Just because there are problems with this doesn't mean we should be defeated by them. We should try tackling those problems.
And
Absolutely.
also to say, like, people like myself who live in a single family house right now who want to stay in Berkeley, yet my kids may be moving on to college and I want a condo, but I want to stay in Berkeley.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, we can't say that I don't think that we should be eliminating the need for multifamily housing or condos or something other than single family housing as a rule just because we don't like the way it looks.
Totally agree. And some of my oldest friends in this town are moving out of town because they can't find suitable housing for their age group any longer,
Right.
which is a darn shame.
And
And
it's
that
just
was
really
that
hard.
was the whole discussion about La Salette. I mean, that's what started the La Salette. So
And it's just really hard in a very built out community to find those opportunity places to put multifamily housing.
absolutely.
Okay, so I have a feeling the next time we talk about this, it's going to be a long discussion, which will be good. So everyone can get their concerns out there. We can have a good discussion about how to accommodate all of these different desires within the community.
Ms. Chairman, we may be
Yes.
needing a work session or two to get through this stuff.
Yeah, and I'll maybe touch base with you on that, Erin. If we have some light meetings coming up, we could certainly do it as part of our regular agenda if we don't have a lot of other things going on. But it does seem like this is going to warrant its own meeting or, a very light agenda.
No air
Okay.
conditioners.
What's that, Lisa?
So when no air conditioners.
Yeah, no, don't pair it with air conditioners.
That'll never end.
Okay, anything else on this one? Email your comments to Erin if you have anything else, right?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Liaison reports. There was a few things that the city council approved the first reading of. The parking modifications ordinance that we had discussed, as well as site plan extensions and clarifying some of our site plan review standards. So that will be great to get that in the ordinance here. I assume that'll be up for second reading at an upcoming meeting, Erin?
Yep. It'll be on the November 16th meeting.
Great. Anyone else have any reports?
Nothing from environmental. We didn't meet last month.
Okay.
Unfortunately, my streak of actually making DDA meetings has fallen apart, and they did not make this month.
I won't be meeting with Chamber until November 11th.
Okay. Okay, that's easy then. Anyone else? No? Okay, lastly then, we have commissioner and staff comments. Anyone have anything to comment on? I will say thank you to Commissioner Campbell for your service on the Planning Commission, and good luck moving on to your new community.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You will be missed.
Ditto.
Anyone else have any comments? We're still going to be virtual next month, right, Erin?
Yes.
Okay.
I attended the I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I attended the MEP training sessions a few weeks ago. I was gonna kind of run down, but it's late, so maybe I'll do that next month. Cause
MEP training session, what was that?
That was the conference.
yeah.
Oh, the conference, okay.
It was good. I went to like 5 or 6 sessions. There's still a couple more that I want to kind of check out. And the nice thing about it being virtual is I can go back and watch them when I feel like I need to. And that's very cool. But I'll fill you more on that next time because we've been at this for a while now tonight.
Yeah, one day.
Ms. Schluto,
Yes.
I've had a lot of citizens ask me, and just a ballpark, when might we be getting the marijuana folks coming before us?
Okay. Well, the merit scores were released last month, and we had our first pre-application meeting with the top 3 applicants last week. We're going to be doing a pre-application meeting this week with them to go over requirements related to stormwater detention with HRC and our DPW director. So hopefully we should be getting the site plans to you. Optimistically, it would be December, but probably won't be till after the first
First of the year. Okay, just curious. People have asked.
We want to make sure that when they come to you, they are largely complete and they don't require any kind of postponement or any, certainly not too many conditions of approval, but to streamline the process and make it as easy and transparent as possible.
That's good. Okay, thank you.
I have a question regarding those marijuana facilities. Recently, I have changed jobs in the last year or so, and I am within about a block of a current marijuana facility. And I will say on a nice day, you get a nice strong breeze of marijuana all day long. And we currently have a problem with people walking down the street and making themselves at home in our parking lot and smoking marijuana in our parking lot. What are we putting in place in the city to deal with these issues?
Well, you're not allowed to have any on-site consumption at all.
They're not on site. They're
that is
moving into our
prohibited.
parking lot and using
They're
that.
moving next door.
I'm sorry?
They're
I said
coming
they're
into
moving
our
next
parking
door.
lot and breaking into our gates and hiding behind the gates and smoking the marijuana. The other thing is, come Friday night, leaving there, good luck. You're not going out that way. You got to go around the block completely opposite way because you're not getting in there because they're lined up out the door to get in there. So I think we need to seriously make some addressing of the parking when it comes to that, because I'm seeing it every day, every single day, what's going on over there, and the parking is not adequate, and they have a fairly large parking lot. Now, granted, some of it is right now being used as a drive-through, which I don't think was originally intended as, but it's a little bit crazy. Spend some time over there off of Hilton, and you'll see what's going on a Friday night.
Okay. Well, I do know that public safety will be made aware of, they know where the facilities are. And so if there are people, smoking or using out in public, that is strictly prohibited. In terms of the odors, we have very strict odor compliance and odor resilience plans that they had to submit for their business plan. So we'll make sure that they comply with all of those to make sure that there is no odor that leaves the facility. In terms of parking, the parking standards that we have are set. We can't require them to provide any additional parking, but certainly, that'll be something that we look at. But the parking standards are what they are. The parking requirements are what they are. And in order for them to even be scored through the merit point system, they had to satisfy that parking requirement. So they didn't even get scored unless they made their parking requirement. Did I address everything? Was there something else?
No, those were the main ones. I'm just saying I'm seeing it on a first-hand basis right now, so.
So curbside was never intended. That is a COVID-related thing that has caused the parking to have a little bit more of an issue just in the last few months. However, I think that, frankly, from the future, what they're looking at is more of a delivery mode. You're going to have more like Grubhub or DoorDash delivery mode in the future, and the physical actual facility will be more like a showpiece than it will be as much dispensing in the future. Is sort of how they might look at that.
Anyone else? Okay, then we just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Aaron, could you call the roll, please?
Smith,
You're muted, Marty.
he doesn't want the meeting to end.
Yeah, yes, I do. I have another thing or two to talk about, but it can wait. So, yes.
Stern,
Yes.
Trotto,
Yes.
Bardis,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Kempner,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Kapelansky.
Yes. Okay, have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Guys.
Good night.